Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Marriage Monday. We are so glad that you're here with us this evening. And what we're going to be doing is picking up right where we left off with our guest speakers. Thank you, Kaylee and Sam, for joining us again.
Yes. Glad to be here again.
All right. Well, last time on Marriage Monday, we asked you all to get on the website and take your your type. I keep correcting myself. To find out what type you are with your spouse. And then we wanted you last week to kind of go through that with your spouse and see what type you are, see, I guess, the compatibility, or see if there's anything, that might be a red flag. And so we're going to kind of talk to that or through that on this episode. And then also, as we're doing this, so we're kind of winding up the rest of the year. We have the next 2 episodes are going to be the Enneagram. And so we're going to go types 1 through 3 tonight. And then 5 through 9 is going to be next week. And so y'all just hold tight to your seat.
What happened to 4?
Everyone forgets 4s.
We're not going to do 4s. So if you're a 4, we've forgotten you. Well, this is also Daniel forgetting how to count, which is pretty cool. That's all the multiverse knows. So anyway. All right. Well, I'm going to let y'all take it away, and then I'll keep asking y'all questions during there. And we should also open it up for comments or anything on social media. If you have questions, comments, or want to get a hold of Sam and Kaylee, I'm sure they'll give you their personal cell phones, right? And yeah,
that's down below.
Yeah, it's down below. No, if y'all have questions for real, then you could always leave it in the comment section and let us know, or get a hold of Palestine Church, and we can help you get in touch with them too. So anyway, without further ado, take it away.
Okay, so we're just going to just go ahead and dive into the types. This is just like a brief overview. There's really so much more. If you did the test, you'll know.
We would be here all night.
Yeah, we'd be here all night on one type. So this is really just to give you like a big picture view of types 1 through 3 today. So just to jump in, type 1 is the moral perfectionist. Their core fears are being bad, evil, corruptible, unethical, and wrong. Their core desire is to have integrity, to be good, to be ethical, moral, and right. Really their core longing, meaning like what they're just longing to hear from you, as a friend, as a spouse, whatever, is that what ones want to hear is that they are good. That's what their core desire and just core longing is. Their core weakness is actually resentment. So what happens in conflict with a 1 is that when they express their anger, it leads to just like this continual frustration and dissatisfaction, but not necessarily with the person that they're arguing with, but themselves. Also, it can, go on to others, but basically the resentment stems from the fact that the world is not perfect. They are not perfect. The people they're interacting with isn't perfect. And so that's where conflict with the 1 can get kind of, awry, is that's where they hyper focus. Yeah. 1s also have what we call like an inner critic. Everyone has this to an extent, but to a 1, it's a prominent issue. So they have this inner critic in their head that's constantly telling them what's wrong with themselves. And so that's just something to keep in mind in conflict with the 1 too, is to present criticism. It's not that you can't criticize them, but just to be aware of that they're already aware of their weaknesses, what they did wrong. So just handle it a little bit more lightly, maybe than you would with an 8 or a different type.
It's very interesting to me because like 1s, like their cores are like, they want to be so good, but it's like, it's not how you would think like good, like a friend or good relationally. No. It's like, it's more, it borders them more like, I'm going to be right.
Like objectively good, like black and white type good.
And you can have a lot of conflict there, especially like given the partner, whatever number they are, coming against that. It's like, they're not going to side on you if they believe that you're wrong.
Yeah.
Like, and so that can cause a lot of issues. And it's like, they don't want to hear like, oh, you're just good for me. It's like, no, like an overall universal good.
Yeah. And so that's where a lot of conflict can come in, because it's very hard. 1s are also, like we said, they are very logical. They are the perfectionist. So you're not going to appeal to 1s with emotions. not unless they have a super strong wing too, which we'll talk about in a bit. But it's going to be very,
My best friend has a very, very strong wing too.
And he's different.
Yes. And he's like, it's like I'm not even talking to a one when I talk to him.
I know. He's my favorite one.
Yeah. He's a fantastic one.
Me and ones typically clash a lot. But yeah, no, Nelson's different.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is one thing to just kind of, they're very much, the world is black and white. They don't really see a lot of gray. Either they were right or they were wrong, or they, you did something right or wrong. And they have that very like just split thinking. There is no middle ground. It's very hard to gain middle ground with a one because they are very logical, very objective, and they believe truth is the same. Mm-hmm. So
some of the like growing points you would say not growing points. I'm trying to handle that lightly, like inside of the context of marriage. Yeah. All right. So if they're trying to be the perfectionist, they're very black and white, but then you have somebody who is just like really sensitive and you're like, okay, the way that you said that came across really gruff. What would you say to a one who's like trying to improve inside of their marriage relationship and is probably a little abrasive? What would you say?
The first thing that I would say would be like that they need to remember there was only one perfect person ever, and that was Christ. And so that is kind of the growth path of a one, is just to come to terms with that we are in a fallen world. Christ is the only standard of perfection that we have. Yeah. And so that would be the first thing. And then the second, as far as relationally, I would say that to kind of remove themselves from that right or wrong type judgment and to think about think relationally, to not think objectively, to not be the judge in that situation, whether someone's right or wrong, but to try to step into like what and how are they feeling and how is that affecting their decisions? So if they need to think about it logically, think about it that way, to step back out, like they're not a judge, and to step out of that role and just see. That's
very good, because like the Enneagram is, it comes full circle. And so ones actually do have a wing 9, and wing 9, like nines are all about perspective. So a one is capable of taking a step back and placing themselves in another person's shoes, which helps relationally, like with that. Okay, I can see where it's coming from. Like they have access to that, even though they like logically that's not their default. If you approach it that way, like they can
step into that role. Ability. They can pull from their wing, the strengths of their wing 9. Yeah, very true. So kind of just, and this may help answer this as well as, I'm just going to quickly talk about in the Enneagram, there are so many different things that influence where you're at with your type. One of those are what we call the levels of health. And so the point of that is an unhealthy one is going to look drastically different than a healthy one. So I'm just going to quickly kind of go over what a healthy one looks like, what an average like on autopilot one looks like, and then what an unhealthy one can look like. So healthy ones, they're going to live their life committed to just serving the world and others with patience and integrity. These are like the people that you'll see are super passionate about a cause. They're always trying to help the underdogs. Like they're those people. And instead of just focusing on how they are flawed as human beings, they fully know, believe, and trust that Christ not only redeemed them from their imperfections, but that they gave them his righteousness. Wow. So they rest in the righteousness of Christ instead of trying to do that themselves.
That was really good. Sorry.
Yeah.
That Holy Ghost moment. All right, keep going. That was really good.
Yeah. Yeah. So that is what a healthy one knows. And that frame of mind is what brings them freedom and compassion, because they're no longer serving for that, like striving for the perfection. Yeah. They know that like they don't need that they don't have to be perfect to be loved. They know that.
Wow.
Yeah. And so,
thank you for joining Marriage Monday. That was beautiful.
My job. No.
That's really, really good.
Yeah. So on autopilot, this is just your average level of health. So average one, they're always focusing their attention on errors and imperfections. And the intention behind that isn't just to be this like judgmental, critical person. It's because they're trying to bring about reform and improvements. Like they're trying to make things better. But this is where you see the most that super loud inner critic that we talked about. So for them in their brain, it is like they have a judge and a jury constantly pointing out every mistake that they make as soon as they make it. And sometimes whether they actually made a mistake or not. So they basically just have like, they're on this constant pursuit of just perfecting themselves, someone else, everyone they know, the world. Like that's where they're at in their life.
Yeah.
So that's them, a one on autopilot who doesn't, isn't fully trusting and knowing and believing their righteousness and perfection is found in Christ. Unhealthy ones, they are fixated on the smallest imperfections in themselves, other people, everyone around them. This is the ones who are obsessed with micromanaging and like asserting control. And they're doing this because the only voice they're hearing is that inner critic. They've blocked out, they've removed themselves from all the positive voices around them, and they're letting their inner critic be truth instead of soaking in the word of God and truth that we know.
Yeah.
And I would just say like anyone who's either in a relationship or married to a one, you just want to be very, very cautious when you are approaching them with any form of criticism, because like Kaylee said, like they have such a high inner critic and they're very down on themselves already. You just want to be very, very cautious. And I can't say that enough, like presenting any kind of flaw to them and having those kind of conversations. Like if you find like, oh, like my spouse becomes so unavailable anytime that we try to talk about anything where they've messed up or anything like that, they could be a one. And so you just need to not necessarily avoid that topic, but find a different in.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's very hard for one, because the thing is they already know. Yeah. They already know how, and actually they're probably thinking they messed up worse than what you're even saying. Yeah. So they're hyper aware of their flaws to begin with. Yours, theirs, everything around them, systems, anything like that, they see it.
That's where my one wing is.
Yeah. Yes. And systems and when you work. Yes. And so, and I grow 2 and 1 too. So that's a whole thing, but I can take on some certain one traits, the healthier I get. So yeah, ones, just be nice to your ones.
Yeah.
So type 2.
One of the tools I was going to say on that, from the book, Keep Your Love On, Danny Silk, he says the best way in communicating like one of the hurts or needs or something, you could say, I feel blank when you blank, I need to feel blank. So like, I feel scared when you do this action, I need to feel safe. Is this something that you use with the one, because it's taking them out of the criticism thing and saying, okay, this is the way that I'm feeling when you're doing an action. It's not necessarily you. But
yeah, I think that's great. So a one may react to that because of the feel word, right? But what's great about what you just said is a one can't tell, like logically, because they're super logical, they can't tell you you're not feeling something. Yeah. So by doing that, it's exactly what you said, Daniel. It's removing the criticism of them. And so another one that we like to use from Brene Brown is like, the story I'm telling myself is. Right. And so it's the same thing. And yeah, that would be a great tool to use with the one.
Cool. All right. Sure. Number 2.
Type 2s.
Number type 2.
I love 2s.
Yeah.
I love healthy 2s.
Type 2s are the supportive advisor. Their core fear is being unwanted, unloved, worthless, or needy. Their core desire is the flip of that. They want to be loved, wanted, appreciated, and seen. The core longing, like what they need to hear the most from you, is that you are wanted. That's the words that they want to hear. Their core weakness is pride. So 2s, they can confidently insert their like helpful support. And what they want from that is for you to say how grateful you are for their for them being so caring, right? And that's where the pride can come in with the 2. So that's their core weakness. And so you can move that down some, baby. So to get into kind of healthy twos on autopilots and unhealthy twos, twos, I'm going to read this and I guarantee you at least 3 twos are going to pop into your head. People that you know, because twos are super easy to identify.
Yeah.
They don't always self-identify very well, but people who are around them are like, oh yeah, you a two. So twos are healthy twos, are loving, caring, and supportive of themselves and others. They don't need constant love and affection for what they've done for someone else because they know, believe, and trust that their worth comes from being Christ's child. Yeah. Twos, if they're healthy too, they know that their emotional, relational, physical needs are always going to be taken care of by God instead of having to be dependent on someone else in a relationship for that. So twos are the ones that are just like, they go out. They're the people like that go out of their way to help you. They're the people that you can pick up the phone, like your car's broken down, they're going to be there. They're constantly putting other people before themselves, almost to a fault at times. So that is a two. Your typical two is, this is where they kind of forget that they are Christ's beloved child. And they begin to kind of move into this like average on autopilot stage. And it's because that they've begun to forget how loved they are in Christ. And they truly believe that they have to earn love and affection through the approval of others. And they do that by being this like person who's always there, this helper, the supporter, the advice giver. Just like they can kind of end up being like these martyrs in their relationships. Wow. And so when they move into these unhealthier stages, they can even purposely create dependencies because of that need to be needed and loved and wanted. They'll do that because they want to be constantly needed and for people to want them. And so they will hide their own needs from themselves and other people because they feel like if they need anything, that will threaten their relationship. They are hyper focused on other people's needs. Yeah. And so, they fear that their needs are going to inhibit others from giving them affection and love, even though that they're like so desperate to receive that. Yeah. So that's a two on autopilot. An unhealthy two at this level, like their whole worth revolves around other people's opinions of them. And it's not based at all on who they really are in Christ.
Wow. So,
in order to feel that they're connected with others, they are constantly looking to see who needs help so they can insert themselves there. When they see a need, they step in, whether they were asked to or not. And if they continue to feel unwanted or disconnected, they will look for every relationship to insert themselves in just to find like the littlest, tiniest needs. And then they're going to go into overdrive to contribute. Yeah. And like I said before, they'll become martyr-like just to be seen as this giver, this helper. Wow. And the problem with that is that there's nothing that they won't do in order to hear words of affirmation. Yeah. So they will get rid of themselves completely.
Twos are very emotion forward. They're gonna just everything's worn on their sleeves, and you might get backlash from twos, not in the moment, but like if you get in the car afterwards, it's like, oh hey, didn't appreciate how you didn't. A lot of times it's you didn't appreciate me, and I did this for you, and you couldn't have been there for me, and so they can think very not objectively, but like what's the term? Achievements? Not achievements. It's like medals.
Oh yeah. Like it's like they're rewards based almost. Yeah, for sure.
And so you're gonna have a lot of conflict there if they're borderlining on the unhealthy side of just you didn't show me enough, and I've been over backwards for you.
I always feel like, so as a 4, me and 2s can clash at times. For one thing, with areas of integration, the more unhealthy I get, the more I take on like the negative traits of a type 2. So when we were reading these like unhealthy things, I can go from this like 4 who is focused on being super authentic, values truth, values my uniqueness, right? To this like people pleasing, like I need people to need me type thing when I get into super, super unhealthy levels. And so I understand a lot of this, but twos and I can, like, as I am now, like as a healthier four, we can clash because I just want the truth. Mm-hmm. And twos can sometimes, because of the more unhealthy they are, because of the people pleasing side of them, they can come off because they just want to give you what you need. I don't want you to give me what I need. I just want you to tell me the truth, sort of thing. And so that's where conflict can come in. If you're a type that values authenticity, twos, you may have a little more issues with in conflict, just because you're going to just want straight truth, and they're going to want to, they're no matter what are protecting you, and they're not showing themselves because they don't want, their needs don't matter to them, just yours do. And so
they think
that is one thing.
Probably protect you at the same time are trying to protect their spouse, so they don't want to.
Yes.
Yeah. We talked about that with just the types of communication, like aggressive communication, things like that. How long do you think it depends from person to person? Because I'm thinking of like going back to the marriage relationship, thinking about how long, like if Ruth and I, one of us was a type 2, how long could your spouse bury things, put things underneath the rug, say, okay, my feelings don't matter, it's all about my spouse, and then it just goes on for years and they build this huge wall in between their spouse.
Yes, they will do it until they can't anymore, literally. And so, different people have different emotional strengths, but they will take and take and take and take and take. And they also, depending on their level of health, have this idea of like, okay, but I gave so much and you're not giving back. Yeah. But they don't want to express their own needs. So there's these expectations that they have that they're not communicating. So to someone else, they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. When twos do explode, and they do eventually. And that's where, some of the conflict can come in, because they're the entire time feeling so underappreciated and underserved when they're giving so much. But the couple, like we mentioned, there's a couple of things. One, did the person even ask for it? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like, is it even expected by the other person, or are you just like martyring yourself for no reason? And then two, like, you're not, because it is so much harder for twos to express their needs. They're definitely not a, direct type in communication. Yeah. Not until they're healthier.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like at the healthiest, like they literally embody love.
Oh, yes. And selflessness and humility. And that's why I say, like, if you know a two that's even moderately healthy, you identify them immediately.
They are modeling it. And it's just, it's fantastic. Like,
it is. Yeah, that's what I love about the Enneagram is, to me, it shows, especially when people are at their healthiest, it shows so many different attributes of God and who he is. And I would definitely say two would by far be like love and just having a giving spirit.
Yeah,
for sure.
And it's interesting because twos, threes, and fours, they fill up what's called like the heart center of the Enneagram. And as we move into threes, I'll come back to that. But twos, they're very, like I said before, like they're the emotional forward people, and that's how they deal with their heart. Moving into the threes, we can talk about like their core fears a little bit and get into it. And then I have a little something that.
Do you want to do threes?
Yeah, I'll do threes.
So
threes.
For twos, how can they improve on their communication? So like if they're not anything that they could do to make it easier or able to,
like the healthier they are or something like that.
Yeah.
I would almost say encourage their spouse or the other person in the relationship to make it a point. Like if you're in a friendship or relationship, a marriage, whatever, with a two, to make it a point to ask them directly what their needs are, because you're going to have to draw that out of them. If you are wanting to be closer to them, if you're wanting to see improvement in communication, yes, like there are things twos can do, but it's so much easier for them if they know that you want to know how, and you need to know how they feel. If you establish that kind of trust and that place for them in your relationship, if they know that's a need they can feel, right? And so then it becomes this open communication of like, okay, no, they want to know how I feel. Like I can tell them. Twos definitely need a safe place, probably more than others. more than other types.
A good practical tool would be maybe start practicing weekly checkups as a couple. And just checking in and being like, maybe Sunday evening, whenever you're going to bed, like, hey babe, how was this week for you? Like, is there anything I could have done better? Like, is there any like way that I didn't show up for you? And just have that conversation back and forth where they also ask you the same thing. And like, you have this weekly checkup that you can come in and you practice it enough to where it's the safe space.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is where we can just put a pulse on our relationship and where we are. If you're dealing with the two, that's going to be super beneficial.
And it's going to be great for them because they'll know if that's an expected thing in their relationship, they're going to be able to handle things in the moment a little bit better and not so emotionally forward because they know they have a safe place for that later.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's a good question.
All right. Going on to 3.
Okay, so 3s, their core fear is being a failure. Incompetent, worthless, and inefficient. Like they believe in and of themselves that they are worthless, which is super sad. But honestly, it's interesting because 3s, when you do look at them, like they bring such value to literally everything they touch. And that's so interesting that that's part of a core fear. That's just something that I've noticed. Their core desire is to be successful, efficient, valuable, and admired. And their longing is just like, you are loved for who you are. Like that's their true longing. Their core weakness can be deceit, deceiving themselves into believing that they are only the image they present to others, embellishing the truth by putting on and like a polished persona for everyone, including themselves, to see and admire. So they're really good at like putting on masks and like hiding and being, no, like everything's good, and like showing up but not actually being present. 3s, like I said before we get into this, like they're healthy in autopilots and unhealthy traits because they are at the center of the heart section of the Enneagram. It is very, very sad because what happens is they can become very disconnected from their own heart. And it's hard to see because they are right in the middle of the 2s being so emotionally forward. And like when we get into the 4s, you'll see like they're kind of more reserved and isolated away from them. The 3s are getting literally the onslaught of both of those dynamics. And what happens is they end up just like cutting themselves off from their heart.
Yeah. And 3s also project, like we call them the chameleons of the Enneagram, because they project whatever. They're a reflection of their social environment. Yeah. So they will kind of shift and change depending on like 3s want to be whatever you need them to be in the sense of identity, not necessarily like action like a 2, but identity. So like if they're at a business mixer, they're the ideal business person. If they're at a family event, they're the ideal wife, the ideal mom. Like they're always trying to portray this image. And by doing that, they're constantly losing who they are and they're hiding who they are. And the 3s don't do well with pain. 4s can really sit in pain. 3s, they cover pain with achievements. And so whatever the pain is, they are like, okay, but I'm going to just achieve more and achieve more and achieve more. Yeah. And so, and it doesn't always look like business. Whatever, values are different for each person, each culture, but that's a 3.
They receive the love like through praise.
Yeah.
Like, wow, you did such a good job. Like that's how they like to receive their love. Healthy 3s are no longer needing the constant applause and admiration of others, since they know that they are loved for simply being themselves without needing to perform. They are still like incredibly talented. They're good at setting goals, solving problems, being efficient and productive, but they are now like doing this on half of others, on half of others and not simply for their own gain. This is what I mean when I say like they literally bring value to everything they touch. Yep. Not only do they no longer need to win people over, but they help others become the best version of themselves. Wow. Healthy 3s know and believe and trust that their worth comes from being God's beloved child and not in their ability to create a successful image or persona.
Yeah.
And so like they're super beneficial, obviously. And just like, I mean, if you have a business team, get yourself a 3 because they're going to help make it thrive. I don't know what I did there on accident. So.
What are you trying to do?
I was trying to scroll, but I'm on my last page. So on autopilot, though, 3s begin to forget that they are Christ's beloved child, that they're valued, loved, significant, and their great worth. They begin to move into like the average levels of development. They begin to believe that they must earn the love and admiration that they are striving for by becoming the most successful, the most admired, the most respected like individual. In order to accomplish this, they shift gears and go into like an overdrive by becoming extremely focused on being the best in every single category, such as like work, health, family, image, and professional status.
And 3s are super competitive, like to a ridiculous level. But it's fun to be around. But for them, it's like, okay, we're playing a game. But if we're playing a game, I'm a win, though.
Yeah,
like that's how 3s are. But it makes them fun to be around. But it's hard for them in a personal sense because that's how they view everything.
Yeah.
They think that they have to win everything, and the fear, it stems from the fear of that, like, they're not going to be loved or be valuable if they're not winning.
And when they lose, we go into the unhealthy.
I don't know what it is. It's a drive inside of me. Like I just am like competitive all the time.
Yeah.
So we took the test last week, or not a test, Kaylee, the guide.
It's the test. It's the test. You're
it's
okay.
Not a personality test.
Ruth is a 3. And so everything you're saying, it's really, really good. I believe you're a healthy 3.
Yeah, I do. It's just that we've had to work past the anything negative is brought up that I spiral down because I already think those things bad about myself. And so then when you and my biggest thing is failing, and I don't want to fail. And so that's been something that we've had to think, because I'm like, oh my gosh, anytime he's like trying to do any negative thing that we're talking about, I always immediately go to, I failed him. I'm a failure.
Yeah. Yeah. That's,
that I have to deal with and not take it to a place. And it's a lot of times we're having to pause and be like, okay, I need time to process this so that I don't have an emotional breakdown.
Yeah. And I have a wing 3. So for me, it really comes out in my work. There was when I first met Sam, and even sometimes still, I used to say, like, I can't take a nap because I feel like a failure, because like those, like whatever hours, like that hour, that 2 hours, like I could have been using that to work and be productive. And so rest was not a thing in my life at all until I met Sam, who is a 9, and you'll learn.
When you learn about 9s, you realize just how much we love sleep.
And rest in general.
And it's just like, lay down, take a nap, the world will
I'm
fix
like,
itself.
but I'm failing.
Yeah. And so it's interesting because like 3 is very similar to 1s, though, in the criticism.
Yeah.
Like that's how, like, if you have a 3, anything that kind of remotely looks like failure, just be very, very cautious moving forward and like presenting that to them.
Yeah.
Because they're like, they also have that. It's kind of like the inner critic, but it's like it's geared towards like succeeding and failing.
Yeah, it's more of a pass fail for 3s.
Yeah.
With where it's like a right wrong for 1s. Like, is this right? Is this wrong? With 3s, they almost go into everything that they do with a pass fail. Like, there's no, oh my gosh, this was amazing, but like over here you could have done better. They're like, if you say that last part, they're like, oh well, then I failed. And so it's and the more unhealthy they are, the stronger that feeling is. Whereas the healthier they are, they can kind of override that initial reaction in their brain a little bit. But yeah, that's definitely true for a 3, I think.
And speaking of the unhealthy stuff, we'll just finish this up with their unhealthy levels. Yeah. They believe that their worth, like their whole worth, hinges on accomplishments, successes, and other people's opinions of them. It's no longer based on like who they really are in God and their status in him. It's because they have forgotten their true identity. They've fabricated like stories about themselves and their accomplishments in order to gain like admiration and love from others. Unhealthy 3s are unable to admit when they're wrong or reveal anything that might diminish their image. So that's where like the masks and everything come in.
The chameleon comes in.
And it's just like, it can be very frustrating. having to deal with that. But
and threes put an immense amount of pressure on themselves, and because of that, they can also put an immense amount of pressure on other people.
Yeah,
because they're constantly holding themselves to this high standard, but other people don't necessarily know they're holding them to this high standard. Like they're holding themselves to that. So then it gets projected and they're like, but I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, so it can be hard for people around a 3 who maybe don't have the tools of the Enneagram or aren't aware, self-aware, because they're just constantly imposing their own standards on other people. And the other person isn't aware of that.
And when you're going through the Enneagram, like, and you're finally like reading this stuff about yourself, like you're going to have so many moments where you're like, that's why. And it's like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. But it's very interesting to me, like that we're hitting on 1s, 2s, and 3s in this episode. And it kind of ties into like this weekend at Gateway, Pastor Robert mentioned this one thing that really helps all 3 of these. Honestly, if you're human, it helps you. And that's this idea of our self-image and how we see ourselves. And he put it in a way that was so interesting to me, because he talks about how like we look at ourselves as subhuman, such like that we're less than. So we try to push ourselves to be superhuman, when in fact, all we are is simply human. And if we can relieve that stress and relieve that pressure that we're putting on ourselves because we believe that we're less, then we will start to function as just simply a human and how we're created. And it allows us to step in, and it allows like the grace of God to come in and show us like who he says that we are, and like how he sees us, and his love perfects us, not our achievements, not because we bend over backwards, and not because we're correct.
That's so good.
And I think like even through all of these, that's what I'm hearing, like, is like the identity. Like if you don't have that centered in Christ, that's just like your bottom base that you have to have.
And that's what
for sure.
Any relationship, marriage or not, marriage. I mean, we can wrap up the thing here. We're kind of going over time, but it's the identity thing. You've said it several times. I mean, it's at the core of every single thing. If you don't have your identity in Christ, you're going to have the unhealthies of whatever. And so anyway, last thoughts for the episode. Anything, encouragements for everybody out there where we're like, here's all your negatives. You're screwed up. Figure it out. But, you got 20 seconds. What do you got? Anything to throw out to marriages this week? Save some marriages, guys.
I'll save some marriages in 20 seconds.
Yes,
20 seconds.
Talk to each other.
Over communicate, guys.
Over communicate. Very good. All right. Well, thank you all again. We're going to wrap up this one. We're going to keep going. Join back next week for 4 through 9. We're going to keep going through the types. And so hope to see you next week. Father, help them. Even though we prayed for them for 20 seconds for their marriages, God, give them an awesome marriage this week, an awesome time to over communicate. And God, we just love them. In Jesus' name, amen.
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 All right.